On this episode of Made in America, Lynda Prigodich of Atlas Stamping and I are going to cover some great ground: women in manufacturing, the aerospace boom, and a whole lot more. Stay tuned to find out what Atlas Stamping makes and why they make it. On this episode of Made in America, I'm with Lynda Prigodich from Atlas Stamping. We got a lot of great stuff to cover. I'm looking forward to doing it. So let's get rolling. Hey, Lynda, thanks so much for coming on.
Well, thank you for having me.
My pleasure. Well, this is the Made in America podcast. So we always start off by asking, what do you make and why do you make it?
So we make metal stamped parts, which is basically like a cookie cutter, and you just cookie cut a million parts at a time.
Okay.
And primarily in the aerospace industry. And why do I do it? I absolutely love it.
Okay. Well, did you love it before you tried it? How'd you end up getting started kind of in the stamping business, and kind of what's the background on that?
So I worked in a different type of stamping company, and it was foil stamping. I didn't know there was a difference. So when I applied, they told me it was metal stamping because I had no clue what I was looking at.
Okay.
And guess what? They didn't hire me.
They didn't hire you?
So
Okay.
I went knocking. They didn't hire me then. And I went a couple of weeks later, and the person they had tried didn't work out. I said, look, give me the job. But in 6 months, when I prove to you I can do it, I'm going to get the title of QA manager and the money that goes with it.
And that's what happened.
And a star was born.
And a star was born. And here we are, president, CEO, leader of Atlas Stamping. So let's just start a little bit on, so when you're doing foil stamping, where were you doing that? Was that kind of your first gig, like out of college or out of high school, or kind of how'd you get into foil stamping, and who were you doing that for?
So I worked for a plating company, and I didn't like the company because they didn't take quality seriously.
Okay.
You know, if they could bend the rules a little, they did. I'm not a bend the rules kind of gal.
Right.
So I went to another company, and it was a paint manufacturing company, and we also did metal foils, which was for greeting cards.
Okay.
So
like foil stamping, when you're I actually don't even know what it is myself. So it's literally like metal, like foil, like you would put on, like you said, see on the inside of a greeting card. Like where else would I see a stamp?
basically, like on the greeting cards, now they use foil to make like breath mints.
Okay.
You know, the strips that you put in your mouth, that's like a foil.
Oh,
Right?
really?
It's not a metal foil, but
Okay.
it's like a foil to kind of illustrate how the breadth of the work. But I had no idea.
Okay.
So, but primarily greeting cards. And
Okay.
so from there, I decided to, I wanted to move up, and there was no upward movement where I was.
Okay.
So that's when I went looking for another job. And
And you said stamping is stamping, so I see that there's some metal stamping opportunity. Let me get in there, and obviously had some struggles getting in. But it sounds like you were relentless, right? Kind of stuck with it, kept going back.
Very relentless, very
Yeah.
relentless. The night before I started, I had a friend showing me how to use a caliper and a micrometer. I had no clue.
Okay. So really getting into it, and basically said, listen, give me an opportunity. I'll show you I can make it happen. And then if I can make it happen, we'll go from there. And you did make it happen, and
Yes.
and worked your way up from there. So how long was Atlas in business before you started there?
I believe since 1970.
Okay.
It's up in the air because it was another name and another name. So
Okay.
around 1970 is when the Prigodich family got involved.
Okay, got it. And so the Prigodich family got involved, then you get involved, and your last name wasn't Prigodich at the time.
No.
No, so, but your name is Prigodich now. So how did that happen?
So when I started, I was the QA manager. Ken was the production manager, and we clashed heads. Then he got promoted. He's the owner's son. And when he got promoted, we no longer clashed heads. And then we started getting along, and he asked me out, and one thing led to another.
And here we are now,
You know,
right? A couple of kids and
Two
a few
beautiful
decades.
children, and a
That's
couple
right.
of decades later, and yes.
So how did you kind of grow through the organization, kind of from QA manager and eventually get into like kind of leadership? Because where you are now, I know you still have your hands a little bit in QA, especially on your experience, and we'll get into it. But in aerospace, which is I know a huge part of the majority of what Atlas does, quality is a really important part for those of us that don't make airplanes but fly in them. We certainly don't want any mistakes made on them. So quality, I know you're still in that. But how did you kind of work your way through? Maybe kind of talk about that journey a little bit.
So it was a very long, fun, hard, interesting journey.
Okay.
I love QA, and I still do QA every single day. I'm looking at the QA, looking at the specs, helping the team. But I became the CEO because running the company is not an easy thing.
No.
Not everybody is good at it.
That's right.
So it was baby steps. I mean, I had QA down pat.
Got it.
Learned production, had that down pat. Then started to learn the other aspects of the company. And, every company has its ups and downs. And, there was a time that we only had $1,000 left in the bank account.
Right.
So if we didn't make payroll, we were closing our doors. So had to come up with fast thinking on my feet. How are we going to cover payroll till Monday? We had money coming in. So that's kind of the slow progression. And then the customer came in and they were very upset with us.
Right.
Our scheduling was horrible. We were way behind. And so I decided I got to take this over. So it was really a slow
piece by piece,
progression.
you learn all the different stuff, the challenges that owners go through in terms of just sort of cash flow management. You got money going in, money coming in. Sometimes those two things don't always line up, especially if you're working with large companies, right? Large companies don't, while they generally always paying on time or paying in short windows isn't always their strong suit. So that's something that you learn to manage through. Has that been, we'll talk a little bit about aerospace is big, obviously, kind of in this part of the country in general. I know aerospace is big in Atlas. Has Atlas always been a big aerospace shop since like the 70s up through to today?
I would say we're aerospace and commercial.
Okay.
So we primarily are aerospace, but we also have many commercial customers.
Okay.
But aerospace is where most of the specifications and all the quality requirements that you really have to hone in on. So it's our bread and butter.
Right.
And we'll do different kinds of stampings, but aerospace,
is a big part of what you guys do. How did you guys survive? I mean, a lot of people that are listening to the podcast are familiar with kind of the aerospace, which has historically been a really boom and bust kind of environment, right? So probably in the 70s and the 80s. I think you joined Atlas in 1990, if I'm
correct.
So maybe you could just talk a little bit about your view of kind of that up and down boom and bust cycle that you've seen over the last 28, almost 30 years. You've been in Atlas, and then I'm sure you have some history about what happened before you got there. Share that with the audience.
I mean, during my tenure there, what was it after 9/11? Everybody had a really hard time. One day we had, $500,000 of orders on the books, and the next day we came in, we had 50,000 because the customer's schedule changes all the time. So that was the hardest moment because we had to lay off half the people. We had to put the other half on job share through a program through the state of Connecticut, and we survived.
Yeah,
but it was very hard. My employees are like my family. I feel every day I'm responsible for 37 families.
Right.
My decisions that I make affect 37 families. So how many people is that? Some of us have 2 children, some have 4.
Right.
So it's very, very difficult, that aspect. Mm-hmm. So, you get smarter. You realize what do you have to do to make sure the next storm comes that you're prepared. Mm-hmm. And so I think we've done that. I also went to a program, Babson 10,000 Small Businesses. It was sponsored by Goldman Sachs. It's one of the best programs ever.
What was it called?
Goldman 10,000.
Well, I know Goldman Sachs, but...
Goldman Sachs, oh my God.
10,000
10,000 small businesses.
Okay.
So the whole purpose is that they're going to educate 10,000 small businesses, and it's completely free. And I was able to go to Boston for a week, work with 70 other companies. 3 months later, we went back to Boston for another week, and we did growth plans for the company. But that was really the beginning of my growth for myself, because it introduced me to all the opportunities here in the state of Connecticut.
Really?
There's grants, there's express loans, grants that we received. There was other NETAC money where, if you lost money for products going overseas, all of those little grants.
What's NETAC? Let's talk about that a little bit.
I
don't know what it stands for. But
New England Technical. I don't know.
Okay, but it's something.
I hope you're editing some of this out.
So it's sort of helped to some degree with export challenges if there's some export issues.
No. So what it did was, if we lost revenue because of exports, it helped give you money for process improvement, training, different things like that helped keep the doors open.
Sure.
So, we were able to hire some experts to come in and look at our process. And, that's where we really started the lean process, where we had people come in and say,
improvement and kind of figure out how to make things run better.
Yes.
So when did you do this Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Businesses program? Like when was that?
That was about 4 years ago.
Okay. Wow. So pretty recently.
Yes.
It sounds like that was super valuable to kind of help you learn some new techniques to manage a business better. And as a leader in a business organization, we're always looking for new stuff to do, right? It doesn't really matter how good we think we are. There's always opportunities to get better. And in this global economy, if we're not getting better, someone else out there for sure is trying to eat our lunch. So
absolutely.
Do you have any like specific kind of takeaways that you feel have been like really impactful at Atlas to sort of help you develop and compete, kind of not just with locally, right? But now we're competing globally.
Well, the thing that I really learned from the Babson program was that you really have to hire some experts. And if you think you don't have the money, you really have to figure out a way to hire the experts that can really take you to the next level.
Gotcha.
So it took me about 2 years to be able to do it, but I hired a CFO.
Got it.
And her skill set is unbelievable, and she's really helped improve the bottom line and really streamline the way we pay our bills and cash flow and looking at return on investments, all of that. So that's been an excellent. I don't know that I would have done it before the program because you're struggling and you're like, how am I going to do this? But in some cases, you have to learn that there's certain things you've got to get other experts in.
Right. Yeah. So really understanding that sometimes not investing and trying to save money is actually the worst decision, and real investments can get there. I think it's really interesting because one of the things that I've talked about in previous episodes and that we're sort of touching on right now, which I think is interesting, is people look at how they invest their money. So let's talk about that a little bit. There's a limited pool of resources, and it doesn't matter if you're a Fortune 100 company or a Fortune 50 company, or a startup or anything in between. You only have limited dollars, and there's always ways to invest those dollars. And some of those investments can be in machines, and we can talk about that. And obviously, ROI on a machine can be calculated kind of in hard dollars, right? If you were able to do X amount of parts in an hour this way, and you can do double the amount of parts for 75% of the dollars, there's clear ROI. But you touched on something that I think is a lot harder for business owners to calculate and think about, which is those sort of soft investments, right? It's saying, hey, we invest in a CFO. We know that a professional CFO probably could manage our dollars better than an office manager or that an owner can do kind of part-time. But how did you know? I mean, was it just faith? Like, how did you know that it would work out, right? Is it just going, hey, this is what we need? Was it just kind of that entrepreneur's gut? Like what kind of got you there to make that investment?
So really what happened is I knew that we had the quality control aspect covered, and we had production, manufacturing, routing, the tooling area. We really had good skill sets in those areas. What we didn't have was someone who really looked at the books, is passionate about the books.
Right.
Okay. I don't think about what a part costs. And I think about the quality. I am quality minded. Right. Production thinks about production. So we were missing that link.
Totally.
And I knew it, and I knew it for a while, but I didn't know how to close the gap.
Right.
So, reached out to SBA, which is, one of the groups I talked about that helps companies here in Connecticut. And Denise Whitford mentioned to me the person that we hired. And we interviewed her, or I interviewed her, and we hit it off immediately.
Perfect.
Yes. I mean, we were like sisters immediately.
Cultural match is so perfect.
Absolutely.
Be able to work together.
And so immediately we knew, and immediately I was like, you need to come, you need to help me out. And she was working as a consultant at that point, so she could come and go wherever she wanted, but she really right away decided to come on board and be part of the Atlas team.
That's so awesome. And what's cool about that too is, I mean, you've brought up something that I think is really important, which is there is a lot of government programs out there, some SBA, which is sort of federal but administered locally, and some Connecticut programs that are really trying to be supportive of manufacturing. And so people have heard about the Small Business Express grant program or probably have, and we can link that into the show notes, but I think that's been super helpful. But even beyond that, right, there's different things like PTAC and SBA that can help not just with sort of financing, but also introducing you to staff. And I think that's a big part of what can help move companies forward is kind of that staffing approach. That's really awesome. So how has I'm going to kind of turn it back to, we talked a little bit about the boom bust cycle, and I think you probably would agree that we're kind of in a boom cycle now and
Absolutely.
working up. So what are you guys, so you see that coming. How long ago did you sort of see this wave starting?
Well, we'd been talking about it for at least a year and a half. We saw the wave coming, and the larger OEMs have been getting ready for it and have been saying, "Hey, the boom is coming. The boom is coming. Get ready, get ready." So we've all the manufacturers in Connecticut pretty much have been, onboarding extra people, investing in new technology, investing in older equipment, refurbishing it, and just being ready for the boom. So the boom is coming.
Yeah.
If not, we're already here.
Right.
It's not as high as it is going to be. So which is kind of good because it's a slow progression into it.
Yeah, it's hard to just take on a tidal wave. It's better to kind of get it going, flowing. So you're seeing year over year demand building at a pretty good pace.
Absolutely.
And looking to take advantage of that.
And
So
what we've done to be prepared for that is that we've started an A3 program, which is like, it's called Kaizen, but it's an easier way, I think, of doing Kaizen, where you really break it down to smaller issues, smaller opportunities. And my employees really have gotten engaged with it.
That's awesome.
We had one process that we improved by 800%.
That's so fantastic. I think most people, this is targeted at manufacturers, so I think most people know what Kaizen is, but that's really kind of a continuous improvement platform from Japan, right, out of Toyota.
Yes.
That's been super helpful, and I know a lot of, over the past few decades, a lot of manufacturers have tried to find different ways to do it, and A3 is kind of a simplified version that can still drive a ton of value.
Yes.
So that continuous improvement is something that Atlas is really serious about, and you've seen already some benefits for that.
So about 7 years ago, we hired a full-time continuous improvement.
There's another investment in personnel, right, to move forward.
And so, that was critical, and it's baby steps. And I think that Kaizen A3 projects, they should be forever. You should never put it on the back burner because we can always get better. Our focus now more with the A3 is really developing the people. We've always worked on developing the people, but A3 process really hones it into really developing leaders within the organization. And who am I to come over here to IT and say, "Hey, I think you should do your job this way."
Right.
Well, that's what it would be like if I went into the factory and I told the guy working in the deburring department that I think he should change the way he's doing it.
Right, because you're not a deburring specialist.
Exactly.
So having people come in and learn from each other and do that continuous improvement is really not only, you think, improving quality, improving throughput, and providing kind of people an opportunity to find leadership and move forward.
Absolutely.
And so let's actually, we're going to kind of circle back around to stuff, but I think that's a great entree into recruiting and retention. So kind of what's your perspective on, the challenges or not, whatever you're finding in hiring people, good people, any people? What's your thoughts on that?
Oh, it's very, very difficult right now to find qualified people.
Okay. Qualified meaning experienced?
Experienced. Technically experienced, any hands-on experience. You can't find any quality assurance managers or inspectors. Quality engineers are very, very difficult. So we're home growing them.
Are you?
Yes, with the help of the state, do the Department of Labor apprenticeship program, pre-apprentice program. They're also Goodwin College has a program, so we're
East Hartford, right?
Yes, East Hartford. We're sending an inspector there to go through their grassroots.
So somebody inside Atlas organization that's showing some opportunity or some ability and some desire, and you guys are saying, "Hey, let's get you in some school and how to help grow that."
So it's all we have to grow within, but we also, as the state of Connecticut, we have to come together. We have to make sure the high schools got. They took tech out of
high schools.
Out of high schools. They're coming back, but we really need to make sure that we're making the investment. People look at manufacturing and they think it's the old, dirty factories of yesteryear, and it's not. The opportunities for people to go right into aerospace or right into manufacturing is unbelievable.
Yep.
And our goal is to make it so that we grow, our people grow. We want all of our people to, be able to afford to send their kids to college,
Sure.
afford to buy houses, afford a good house,
Raise a family, have a good
yes.
life. And
And
manufacturing
that's
really
our goal.
offers that opportunity to really
Absolutely.
get out there and do that. And you're seeing that at Atlas and amongst other places. I know you're out there a little bit too. I know you're a member of like the Aerospace Component Manufacturing, ACM, and some other stuff. What are you doing in those organizations? Well, what are you doing in those organizations to work on this kind of recruiting, training, opportunity? Another person I've talked to has said, Connecticut's jobs in search of a workforce. It sounds like you're echoing that a little bit.
Absolutely.
What do you see the private sector doing to help kind of foster and build that workforce for tomorrow?
The bigger companies are giving scholarships. They're bringing on paid interns.
Yep.
They get first pick at the colleges when these kids are about to graduate. They get first picks. So we're working with the colleges to the level that we can,
Yep.
and we're involved in what programs are out there. The state right now, Goodwin's working on a new program, metrology, and they've asked my opinion, and I've gone to many meetings and trying to hone in on what companies really need. So
you're investing your time as the CEO and leader of Atlas, going into some educational settings and trying to help them come up with a curriculum that's going to develop, that's going to create people that can work in kind of in your business. I think
Yes.
that's a really a good thing to do. And listen, there's limited time, and I know you've got quality oversight you need to do. You're out there beating the bushes to try and develop new customer relationships and deepen existing ones. Not to mention overseeing everyone in the business, but in addition to that, spending time out there in the community, kind of helping the schools. So I think that's super powerful. Do you see ACM kind of getting involved in that as well?
Oh, ACM is very involved, very, very, very involved. And we're making headway.
Yep.
They're putting together, hopefully, a commission that's going to really work on tying all the services together.
Sure.
So that we're not duplicating, what program is over here and what program is over there, really streamlining the process to help companies and to help employees.
So getting people in the door and having a trained workforce is one part of the, equipping the business from a labor perspective. But what are you guys doing to retain the people that you guys currently have? When there's one of the challenges, and certainly we see this in the IT field, is, when there's a high demand on the people, it's not just means it's hard to find them, but that means it can be hard to keep them because there's so many opportunities out there for them. And I know that's kind of the same in where you are. So what's Atlas doing to try and, retain people and make them feel at home and want to stay?
Well, most of the employees really love being at Atlas. It's like a family atmosphere.
Sure.
If we can help change your schedule slightly so you can come in an hour later. We try to be flexible. It's manufacturing, so you can't be overly flexible because the machines are only going to be running.
Yeah.
But if we can be flexible, we try to be as flexible as possible. We just had a huge pool party at my house, and all the employees came with their families and children and grandchildren. So that was a blast. So we spend a lot of time, helping our employees as much as we can.
Right.
We're starting what we call Atlas University, where, we're going to offer different programs for them. And, it could be just Excel or Word. It can, so we're still in the development stage and
investing, but looking at ways. So that's really interesting, right? I think a lot of times when we talk to people about what they're doing on a retention basis, they spend a lot of time talking about kind of the nice things, and they're good. Flexibility is great, and pool party is fantastic. You got to invite me to the next one. All that stuff's great, but I think you're touching on something that I'm not sure people look at and think about enough, which is, what are we doing to grow the people inside of our organizations and improve their opportunities and make them better and more valuable? I think that gives them a desire to stay, right? Because then they see themselves getting better, and it impacts the benefits to Atlas, right? Because now every person's getting a little bit better. And even to your point, even if it's just Excel, if everybody's a little bit faster at Excel and that's a key application they need to use, that's another way of improving throughput and improving quality and all that type of stuff. So
absolutely. So our production manager started off as a setup man.
Okay.
One of our lead inspectors started off as a machine operator. So we really believe in helping each employee to
grow within,
to grow and become the best at what they can. And if they want to try a new challenge, we try new challenges.
That's really
we've had people who went into shipping and receiving and hated it,
Right.
So then we said, okay, do you want to try this? You want to try that? So we really try to find where the person is
Fits the best.
happiest,
Yep.
So sometimes you have a demand and you're like, I need somebody over here. Well, let's find what they want to do, because let's face it, I put off the things I don't like to do, and I excel at the things that I love to do.
Right. So some of that's right, the management alignment. I think that's a really great point, Lynda. Thinking about what we need to do, we need to really line that up with the people that want to do it, because the right person in the right seat can do wonders, right? Less management, less training. And I think you hit the nail on the head. We do what we want to do, which if that's in alignment with what we're supposed to do, perfect. Otherwise, we waste a lot of time. And that's I think something that not a lot of people think about as much, which one huge advantage of being in a smaller business, manufacturing and otherwise, is that ability to be flexible, right? Not just in the schedule, but where you've got somebody of kind of your experience and your caliber thinking about, how can I make the people that work here better? What opportunities can we show them? I don't have somebody that's in one role, the setup guy, and we're like, well, he's got to do that for 5 years. You've got opportunities now, and you're giving them training. That's great. Are you running all those programs yourself? Like, who inside of Atlas kind of oversees that training area?
So we hired a HR person,
Okay.
and she's very much instrumental in making sure that we're all meeting on a regular basis. She's touch bases with the employees on a weekly basis. Check in.
Checking
Are they
in, seeing what's
happy?
going on.
How's things going? If somebody starts missing a few days, we check in to see maybe
What's going
something's going on, and try to help them where we can.
That's another fantastic benefit of a small business, right? You're not a number, you're somebody that works there. That's really great stuff. So that's a little bit about the culture of Atlas, I think. And so, we've talked about some of the stuff you're doing. How would you define, the culture of Atlas? You said it's like a family. Is that kind of how you would define, the culture there and what you guys look to have?
Well, our mission is do the job right the first time, on time, every time.
First time, on time, every time. That's awesome.
And, so we all strive for that. And if we accomplish that together, and we have to do it together, or we're not going to do it. So,
That's right.
it's a unity,
Right.
People come together, and, I would say it's a family atmosphere, but as we grow, we're trying not to lose that. Hey, let's, stick together. Let's cover each other. Let's make sure that we're helping, always lend a
Really
hand.
helping hand. So that's awesome. I think one of the things that's right there, which I think people could take from is, you've got this driving mission that everyone knows. The ultimate goal, right, is to do the job first time, on time, quality every time, right? So I think that's really fantastic. That's something everyone can rally around, and you mix that with a family atmosphere, that can be really, really powerful from a throughput standpoint.
And even as we grow, we haven't lost the family unity. We call it family, but really it's just a unity of the workforce.
Yeah.
Because as we grow, we're, I may not be there every single day, but when I do go in, most of my employees come running up, give me a hug, they're so excited to see me. And so it's really nice, because they know I have their back.
Yeah, that's awesome. Do you see, with the kind of big buildup in aerospace, we're not the only place in the world or in the country even that has aerospace manufacturing. What do you see that either Atlas has to do specifically, or also that plus kind of in general, what the Aerospace Alley here needs to do to remain competitive in the top kind of aerospace manufacturing area in the world?
We have to figure out a way to bring more people to Connecticut, or upgrade the level of education. It could be on the job or in the colleges, in the schools, but, workforce development is huge. Internally, what we're doing is we're looking at robotics. We're looking at artificial intelligence. We're going to do that where if we do bring in robotics, our operators will learn how to program them.
Yep.
And instead of running one machine, they'll run one machine, the robot will run another machine.
Yep.
So we're definitely looking at, scaling up with our people.
So trying to find, combination, it sounds interesting, right? You started talking about workforce development as a key kind of macro trend. Like, we need to invest as a state, as a region, as companies. We all got to work together to drive that workforce as a key way to kind of maintain that competitive edge. And then simultaneously, you're talking about robotics and automation. So where do you see the intersection, like, do you think robotics are going to replace a lot of these job openings that we have, augment them? How do you see those two things working together?
Well, I don't think that people are always afraid that the robots are going to replace us, right? People are always going to be needed.
Right.
So somebody needs to repair the robots, somebody needs to program the robots, somebody
Sure.
needs to make the robots.
Yep,
So,
yep.
I don't see robots replacing us all. I do see robots as being a plus, an advantage. So you can get robots to do some of the processes, but not all of them.
Sure.
So you still need that human touch.
Yep.
Not everything can just be programmed. So I don't think that we're going to be eliminating jobs.
Right. But
I know at Atlas, we're not going to eliminate
not
jobs.
eliminating jobs. That's great. But using those robotics and that new technology, in terms of like the stamping process and all that, is that pretty much kind of staying the same? Are there any technology advancements kind of in what you guys are doing as a core business? I mean, I know you guys do unbelievably small stamps, like thousandths of an inch or whatever, right? I mean, so you're talking about precision stamping. Is that kind of is what it is? What's the future of stamping look like? And what do you see kind of in that area?
I mean, some automation can come into it. Some newer presses have stable the process a little bit more, but a stamping is a stamping.
Sure.
Like I can use a press that's 100 years old, or I can use a brand new press. It tool wear differently if it's a new press compared to an old one.
Yep.
So overall, the industry with stamping is not changing, but we can get more automation in it. We can get more sensors to make sure that we're not, blowing up, that the parts blows out. We don't destroy a tool. We don't, hurt a person. So in that regard, it grows. But a stamping is a stamping.
It's a stamping, yeah. And the needs for those stampings really aren't changing either. And there's no, do you see, one of the things we talked about and you hear a lot kind of out there is, 3D printing, additive manufacturing, and all that. Is that kind of coming into the stamping world at all as far as what you're seeing? Or?
Well, I certainly hope to introduce 3D stamping into our tooling and into our development.
Okay.
So we keep looking and kind of waiting for that machine that comes out that's at that right point. They're still developing it.
Right. So future technology play, not sort of anything currently. What's driving you, Lynda? Like, what's kind of in you to do all this? I mean, we've been through, kind of came in, in the 90s. You mentioned you grew up, you went through 9/11, you went through the 2008 recession cycle. You're still burning strong. Like, I mean, we know each other a bit. You've got a bundle of energy, always kind of doing stuff. What's in there? What's kind of the fire that drives you?
I just love it. It's not a job. I just love it. I loved it since 1990, since I walked in the door. I think it's enough of a variety every single day that it's a challenge, but it's repetitive enough that you can really get your hands wrapped around it.
Sure.
So it's just exciting. I love seeing the customers. I love seeing the end product.
Yep.
We make, really good parts, and we're proud of our quality,
Absolutely.
And in aerospace, we all have to have excellent quality, but we do.
Right.
The effective parts per million is a standard.
Right.
Ours is basically 0.
Wow.
And that's what you want. And we make over about 400,000 widgets a quarter.
Right.
And our defective amount that leaves the shop and gets to the customer is basically 0. Wow. So we're very, very proud of that. So
it's like, it's funny. There's talking about when you're looking for somebody in the organization to be able to take on a particular job. One of the things that you mentioned was put somebody in alignment with what they want to do. And now looking at what fires you, how do you kind of go through and every day come with the energy that you come with? Kind of the same story, right? It's you found something that you love, you got passionate about it, and it doesn't feel like a job. It's every day comes in, and I'm sure not every day is the best day,
right?
But ultimately on par, it's all really good stuff. So,
but like
awesome.
Process improvement, I love it. If they're struggling with a process and we go in and we look at it and we, run a root cause corrective action and we figure out what went wrong and, make the work instructions even better, simplify the process. I love that. I just think that's exciting. So I could do that every single day
and not get tired of it. So I know you're out in the community a bit, right? We talked about the ACM. You've gone to Goodwin College and you do a bunch of other stuff. Talk a little bit about your view of the importance of business leaders at all levels, right? Whether it's, a startup manufacturer, a long-term but still somewhat small manufacturer like yourself to the largest companies. Do you think it's important that we're engaging kind of in the community? Talk a little about your thoughts on that.
Well, I've been a volunteer since my daughter was born.
Right.
So And I guess I volunteered before that in high school. I volunteered, but really, since she went to nursery school, and I've been volunteering, many, many years on different boards and commissions. And I was an elected town councilwoman in Plainville, so that was fun, hard, interesting. So I just think that if you want to make things better, you have to get involved.
Roll up your sleeves.
And so,
part of the solution or part of the problem, right?
Right. And we support the Pettit Foundation.
Yep.
That's, so we show up wherever we can to help that foundation out. So Atlas does believe in being in the community, and that's how we grow.
Yep.
And that's how you make connections. And when you make connections, all of a sudden I need IT, and here you are, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly. There
because
you go.
we met you through a connection.
Sure.
So so that it's so important,
right?
And I love sharing my ups, my downs, my triumphs, because other people, if somebody else can learn from it, learn from my mistakes. Let's not all have to repeat the same
mistakes over. Agreed.
So,
I mean, so one of the things that I believe in is that working together, kind of that rising tide lifts all boats type of mentality. And so when you're in ACM, do you find that it's more of a community of collaboration as opposed to competition? Like people share, I mean, obviously there's some competition, right? But for the most part, is that a good place to go to kind of learn from your peers? Like where do you get that peer learning?
So it's excellent place to be with like-minded people. We also have, yes, we compete a little bit, but they only have so many stamping houses in the group.
Right.
They only have so many welding. They only, so they really try to disperse it and not, we're not going to have 50 stamping houses, right?
Yep,
because we want to be able to feed off from each other. ACM members have come in and done a mini Kaizen with me at Atlas, looked at the process to see, how they think we can improve. I've gone to other companies, looked to see how they can improve. Can I help you look at your process? I'd be happy to do it.
Right.
So I think ACM is stellar at that.
That's fantastic.
They really believe in, talking it, and we have a board meeting once a month where we really get honest.
Yep.
And we can put it all out there so we can learn from each other what's going on in the industry. We talk about the raw material costs and push outs. So yes, very, very instrumental in growing Connecticut, I believe.
I think so too. And I hope people that are listening, if they're not participating in whether it's the Aerospace Component Manufacturers ACM group or there's a number of like other groups, if you're looking for something kind of more statewide or more local, there's tons of groups. But I think it's important if we're going to continue to be, the global place for aerospace, and not just aerospace, but we've got medical device manufacturing and all kinds of other stuff. If we're going to continue to be there, we need to work together to cover these challenges, right? To encourage each other, like you talked about, whether it's Kaizen or the employee, the labor force buildup. Like as one individual companies here and there, we're not going to be able to do it. But I think together, we can make a real big difference.
UConn, Central, they have programs. We primarily worked with UConn. We haven't had an opportunity to do it with Central, but they have junior projects and senior projects.
Yep.
These young people come in and they, will help us solve an issue, but it gives them hands-on experience. We, more people should be willing to say, hey, come on over.
Sure.
Open up your doors.
Yep. Yeah, actually, I'm going to talk about that because I mean, there's a program, I don't know if people are listening know this or not, but there's a program you can go to UConn and they'll give you, I think it's like 10, and well, it depends on the number, but usually, somewhere 8, 10, 12 of their kind of high-level students that will do a project for you. There's a small cost to it, but they basically put like a quarter's worth of work into trying to help you move the ball forward. I mean, it's a relatively small investment for a possible great outcome. And I think the side benefit is you're introducing, college students to this great job opportunity that they may not have known about down the line. So it's a real win-win. Businesses get something out of it. The students get some experience, helps build the workforce. So if people haven't looked at that, I think that's a really great thing to work on. And that's something you've done and had success doing.
Yeah, we've done, I think, 3 junior projects and 2 senior projects where we've had the students come in. We also have a lot of the high schools come in and do tours.
Yep.
And some of the state programs, they're working, helping to put people back to work.
Yep.
And they'll come in, they'll tour our facility. Gives them an idea of what's out there, and it helps get them back into the workforce.
Perfect.
Where my operations manager is going to go to a class and speak soon. My production manager is gone, and he was very nervous, but he went to the high school and he spoke to 3
getting him
different
outside his
classes.
comfort zone there.
Exactly,
Yep.
exactly. So it's not just me getting out into the community as we're growing. We're really getting, the team is able to get out more. As we get better at our processes and as we're growing, we're able to give more back to the community, and I believe in that.
That's awesome. I believe in it too. So I'm really glad we got to talk about that. So right before we kind of start to wrap it up, one thing I wanted to talk about is, I think women in manufacturing and especially women leaders in manufacturing, I don't think has been historically where things have been. It's certainly a lot more so now. And I'm happy that we've got you on the podcast to talk about that. And we've got another woman manufacturing leader coming on in a few weeks. So that's exciting. But talk about, I'd love to kind of hear your perspective. I mean, what was it like kind of when you got started in the 90s and, you've been kind of leading the organization for a while. I'm just interested to kind of maybe share with me and the audience what's kind of been your experience and what advice you might give to other women.
I mean, I've never been treated any differently than the men in the room.
Oh, wow.
So I've had a really good, opportunities, nothing but respect. Has been shown to me over these years.
Mm-hmm.
People are always willing to help, which is great. I did participate on a panel recently for Senior Executive Women Network, but, we had a panel discussing, women equity, and, it's still going on where women are not paid as much, and, they have a much harder time,
progressing in their careers.
Progressing up the ladder, and how to equalize that. So it's still happening, but I seen great improvement.
You have.
Yes, and ACM, I believe there's I believe there's at least 2 or 3 other women owners that are coming to the meetings, and so I think it's growing, and I think power, women rock. So.
Well, I can't argue with that, Lynda. I can't argue with that at all. And so is there? So it sounds like there's women supporting women to help grow. And you said you haven't seen a lot of challenges. What do you think you've done to kind of get to have that experience? You know what I mean? Is it just like work, keep your eyes ahead and keep working, act as if, like, kind of, do you have a strategy? Has there been anything conscious you've done to have the success you've had?
I think it's just my personality, where I'm never looking to, I was never looking to be the owner. So, it was just a slow progression, and so it was just support all along. So, but, it's
been a welcoming environment for you. And,
absolutely.
And something, I know your son's in the business and your daughter's not. She has a different passion. But you feel like women can do a great job in the manufacturing and be accepted and do all that, which I think is probably factually for sure accurate. But I think it's great to kind of have that example and let young women and even older women and girls know that there's a great career in manufacturing, whether you want to work at the machine level or you want to be in QA or you want to be the CEO or in the owner or sales or whatever, which you've done almost all of that, if not all of it. And done it super successfully. I think that's really encouraging.
And there's a group, Women in Manufacturing. So I haven't been able to get to one of the meetings, but I'm hoping to join. Okay. And, so there's a whole group
out there to support women.
Yes,
I think that's important, right? Because there's a lot. Obviously, there's half the population, or maybe even a little bit more, is women. And I think we want to make sure that as we're trying to develop this workforce, we want to make sure that we include them in that and make sure that they know that manufacturing is a great opportunity for women to work in, and that I think having their experiences would be awesome, and kind of bring that in there, and to see that grow is good.
I think there are still some stigmas out there. I mean, some of our women want to try some of the operations, and I can see some hesitation because, they're worried that they're going to drop the tool or get hurt. And, so we're still working through that, that women aren't as powerful as men.
Right.
So,
right.
I think it happens everywhere.
Do you think that's more of a internal perception than a reality?
Well, I certainly don't think that I'm as strong as some of the guys and that I should be lifting some of the tools that they can lift, right?
Right.
But I also think that given the right set of tools, I can run the machine just as well as any man. So I think we still have to try to, but in a way, they're looking out to say, hey, I don't want her to get hurt.
Right.
So there's a balance still there.
Sure.
And so some of it is just human nature.
Right.
But as long as we're not, holding people down, right?
That's awesome.
We really want to keep progressing.
That's awesome. I'm glad to see you've done that. It sounds like Women in Manufacturing, the WIM group's pretty good.
Yes.
Moving that forward. So that's awesome. Well, thanks so much for all that. When we start to kind of wrap up, I have a few kind of rapid fire questions that we're going to go through. So are you ready? So these are hot take questions. So they'll be like, some of them are a little long, some are just a choice. So you're going to pick it. You ready?
Okay.
All right, here we go. So Red Sox or Yankees?
Neither.
Neither. Which one?
Orioles.
Baltimore. Oh, there we go. Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts?
Starbucks.
Staycation or exotic destination?
Exotic.
iPhone or Android?
iPhone.
Sports car or SUV?
SUV.
There you go. If you could do anything other than what you're doing today, what would it be?
Ooh. I would be golfing every single day.
Would you LPGA, professional golfer, if you could?
Absolutely.
All right, there you go. What is your favorite business book?
Oh. I don't know.
You don't know. That's all right. What's one thing that you learned early in your career or early in your life that you think helped propel you to the success you have? Like, what's an experience that you had early that really helped you and helped you grow?
Wow, that's a good question.
Yeah.
But I think I was on my own at a very early age, and so that really helped me to mature and grow up and just really be ready for any challenge.
Self-reliance, that's awesome. And last one is, what's something that you learned later in your career, Lynda, or later in your life that you wish that you had learned a long time before that?
That's an easy one.
Okay.
I wish that I had learned to ask people to help me early on, rather than waiting until I was 50 to be willing to say, hey, can you help me?
Really? Well, I'm supposed to go on the hot take, but I'm curious, what made that change for you? What helped you to see that asking for help wasn't a weakness or was okay?
Maturity, I think. Maturity. You look weak if you ask people to help you. You don't.
You don't.
So, I think, if I could give any advice, it is seek out, ask for help whenever you can. And when you're asked for help, help.
Help.
So...
yeah, give and get. I love that. All right, cool. So one last thing I want to ask before we kind of wrap it up is, what's one customer, we asked for like the white whale customer, what's one customer maybe you've been dying to get in front of or that you've been talking to and you're like, they need to buy Atlas stampings? Is there a customer out there like that?
Saffron.
Saffron? All right, maybe they'll be listening. We can connect, get you connected. So Lynda, after people listen to this, if they want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to reach you?
Oh, Lynda at atlasstamping.com, Lynda.
I was going to say we better do that. Yeah.
And phone 860-209-1350.
That's awesome. So you guys got that. We'll also be in the show notes. So if you didn't write it down or catch it, you'll be able to look it up. So the very, very last question, Lynda, I wanted to ask you was, given everything we've talked about today, and we've covered a lot of really great ground, if someone wants to look at that one takeaway that you think could really impact their life or their business and make it better, of all the stuff we talked about, what's one thing you'd want them to highlight?
Ask for help and take it. That's the biggest thing that I've learned over the years is really, there's so many experts out there, but you just have to seek it out. You can't hide behind and think that you're going to do it all. You can't. So seek out the experts. Seek out
the experts. That's a great takeaway. And actually, that was the one I was going to do. So I'll have to pick a different one. And I think the other one that we talked about, which is so important, is that together we can do so much more than apart. And we've talked about the organizations that you've been a part of. We talked about workforce development not being an any individual company thing, but it's having these groups and then being an active participant, getting on the boards, getting engaged. I think is huge, and I think as a community, in Connecticut and Western Massachusetts, us doing that will really raise the level of all the boats. So, Lynda, thank you so super much for coming on and discussing with us what you make and why you make it.
Thank you for having me.
As always, thanks so much for tuning in. I definitely want your feedback and hope you subscribe. But what I want the most is to build a community where we learn and grow with each other. I hope you're getting a lot of value out of the time we're spending together. Thanks so much for listening. I'll see you next time.